I basically realized I was recording without a proper light all along, so I'm really sorry for that, guys. Hello, my hamsters, and welcome back to the little house. So today we are speaking about hearing aids. I am wearing hearing aids. Oh my goodness, the difference between the ear I have one in and the ear I don't. Okay, while my hearing is back now. Good. Taking a sip before we dive into this story. This is honestly a pretty big story time, so I kind of want to have everything on display, and it's a bit more casual. I do not want to talk about religion, New Age, or anything like that today. I'm really not in a mood for that, especially when it's been a sick week for me, and I just was coughing and having headaches, which is marvelous. Please be safe. Like, we still have a pandemic going on. Just a reminder, be safe, wear your masks. Love y'all. So, without any further ado, like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell. Don't forget that. So, let's get going. You can also find me on Instagram and Byte. I created Byte. I have my own issues with TikTok that I talked about, and these are the exact reasons I don't want to have it. So I do have Byte. It is way better, in my humble opinion. So yeah, you can go check me out. Both links are in the description, as well as maybe people I will mention that are really helpful for people who are going through hearing loss and generally hearing struggles, but especially deafness, because that one is very big, and people who are having severe hearing loss, I think, might really benefit, especially if it's sudden or something like that. These people are very comforting, in my opinion. So let's get going. So I just kind of want to begin this story from the beginning. The weird thing about this is that I don't think I've seen that beginning. Neither did my parents, funnily enough. We all just contributed this entire me needing to turn up the volume and like ask for things to be repeated again and again and again, to like me just being this wondery artsy personality, which frankly I am, you know that. I mean, I've made a song and posted it over here, so you know I'm pretty artsy, but it's very much not that. It is a hearing problem. And this is so funny. So basically, I did not ever notice that. Just, it flows under your radar. And a lot of the time people say, like, other people notice hearing loss before the individuals with hearing loss notice it themselves, like notice the situation and whatever the heck is happening. Because the process is a lot of the time, not all of the time, there is sudden hearing loss that is really scary. I cannot imagine that. But usually it is gradual. And whenever something is so gradual and it's nearly unnoticeable for you, your brain is just kind of getting you used to this thing. And then you realize, oh my goodness, everyone around me is literally mumbling. Like, that was kind of my experience. So, I remember, so this is the year where I got into my high school, which funnily enough, even there, I had that entire situation of having to get my hearing tested because I had to have a perfect hearing test in order to get in, which at the end I did get a hearing test that could get me in, like, but that was a realistic picture, but then it changed, I believe. So, yeah, I had that, and then again I did one test where they were like, this is not a perfect hearing test, you cannot get into music high school. I immediately cried, because that's literally all I wanted since 5th grade, since I was 11. And, whatever. We went to my trusted ear, nose, throat doctor, who did a hearing test, and he said that they over-exaggerated the entire thing. And also it was very difficult for me to focus whenever one of the headphones is just making these noises, like these staticky kind of things, and the other one has the actual sound that's supposed to be noticed by my brain and my ears. So that's nice. Anyway, I get into the high school. Whatever. First year pretty much fine. But as soon as October-ish, half of October, and nearly November, something like that, around this time actually, currently it's 17th of October 2020, this haunted year. So 17th of October, I think that's around that, like middle of October, end of October, beginning of November, that kind of period. Sorry for this rant. Where I noticed that my ears are ringing really loudly. And I remember the instance of coming out of the piano classroom, and I'm going downstairs and, out of the school, and thinking to myself, my ears are ringing so loudly. Like, I have never experienced ringing this loud. It was very, very loud. Now, I do know that some people contribute this to demons and, things alike, of which, if you want me to make an entire video about that I actually have recorded already, that would be great. I could edit it and post it, but I just want to put my story out there because I find this is much more important than anything else I would have to say in this point in time. So I continue. I move on because it's not causing any significant barriers. It's not causing any significant kind of, it's not causing me any hardship. I'm not having trouble hearing people. I'm not having trouble with clarity. But I do notice ringing. And the ringing goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Now, again, still I'm repeating I'm fine. Fast forward to, say, New Year's Eve. And as most of you know, if you were ever a teenager, you can trust your friends a ton more than your family. I'm not saying this in a mean way, but I'm saying it in a way of, when a family member says something, you get a tiny bit of a mature approach of like, oh, they're my family member. And then whenever it's a friend, you're like, oh, that's an outside perspective, right? Obviously. So I was at my bestie's and we were watching this movie. It was first day of 2020, actually. January 1st, 2020. And I just woke up. I'm a complete night owl, so I just woke up. And we're watching this Christmas movie that was on her TV. And there were kids singing Christmas carols. Nothing too unusual, obviously. But what was unusual is her telling me, like, these harmonies are so nice, aren't they? Asking for my musician opinion and stuff. So I'm like, I barely hear the harmonies. Like, I could hear the solo singer really clearly and really well, but the harmonies were barely noticeable. Like, I understand they are there, I hear them, but I have a loss in clarity. And that's one thing that I've also heard audiologists, some of my own doctors, but also many people online that are audiologists and qualified and talk about these types of things, which I will link these resources as well. Basically, sometimes you first lose clarity, then volume. You won't immediately notice like declining volume, rather declining clarity. Especially if it's mild hearing loss like my own. So that continues. That was like the first type of, really my ears might not be as sharp as I think moment. And again, and at that point I was actually talking about my tinnitus to everyone because it was so annoying to me. But it was just annoying. Now, the year goes on, I do not really notice much. But the summer comes. Now here's the kicker. When the summer came, it all got worse. Basically, the ringing got louder and louder, and I heard people mumbling, more so than usual. I found myself having to tell my parents to repeat things as well. Because, like, I hear you're speaking, but I cannot hear what you are speaking. And again, I'm no expert, but I have heard that that's what can happen with hearing loss in more higher frequencies, which would kind of explain why my ringing is so high-pitched. And again, just emphasizing I'm not an expert. So basically at this point, I cannot handle this anymore, and I decided I have two options. One is go to the bottom of this thing, and two is not do anything at all and just make it worse. Obviously, I chose the former because, like, it's an obvious thing to choose. Like, I want to know what the heck is going on. So, again, we go to the ear, nose, throat doctor, who decides to check certain things and then says, all right, I'm gonna do a hearing test. So he does a hearing test, and he does notice a decline in hearing that is not major. But that's another thing that is very kind of, I think, specific to my story, because I am forced in everyday situations to pay very much attention to sound. Not only because I'm an auditory person by nature, but also because generally in musical environments you're forced to notice sound again and again and again and again, and like the slightest, tiniest variations in it, including the dynamics, which is when things really kind of struck for me. And all right, we noticed that, and he says, okay, if the audiologist is needed, we can contact an audiologist. So that's what we basically did later on. And then it was confirmed. I do have hearing loss. And it is kind of on this line, like kind of on the border for, okay, sure, maybe there could be a hearing aid, but it isn't necessary. So I was like, okay, fine. I don't need a hearing aid. We're just going to continue and see what happens. Now, was I shocked when I came back to school in September and struggled to hear my teachers under their masks? So much. Like, it is just indescribable how much I struggled with that. Because it is not this huge difference, but it's a difference enough that I'm like, what the heck is going on? And that's the thing, because as far back as I can go, I cannot think of a time where I haven't been at least a tiny bit in need of repetition for things that I'm hearing. Also, if you can hear the TV, I'm sorry. Hopefully you cannot. So, overall, I decide to move on from the audiologist, and as I'm noticing the shock, I'm like, I need hearing aids. But the weird thing is, when you go to music school and it's expected of you to have perfect hearing and whatever, it's kind of like, whoa, I'm doing this really weird thing and I don't know how I'm gonna get used to it, which, to be completely frank with you guys over here, I'm still not used to hearing music. I just am not used to hearing music this way. And basically, it takes time, because whenever you're used to hearing music in a certain way for 15, 16 years, and then suddenly you have this amplification on, it is very different. It is a very different story. It really did help me to watch people like Jessica Kellgern Fozard or Ricky Pointers. Not necessarily because they thought I was going deaf, but I also really did. Although I really have to say to anyone who's experiencing tinnitus, even if you think it's demons, I have to say, around 60% of people who experience tinnitus actually have hearing loss. So go test your hearing. Do it a favor. And yeah, that's around my story. Now I have hearing aids. I'm still getting used to hearing music and stuff. And to my fellow musicians who are going through this process as well, I absolutely get it. I absolutely get it. I know it's terrifying. I know it's exhausting. I know it is a lot to handle. But at least for me, it is way less anxiety-inducing than experiencing tinnitus and kind of fearing that you're not going to understand someone or that you're not going to hear something clearly enough. As I'm walking my dog down the street and it's a tiny bit dark, I really am grateful for my hearing aids at that point because, they would make everything more clear in that sense. Because again, my hearing loss is not very significant, and I cannot imagine being in a position where, for instance, I need to rely on them in order to hear a car coming, because without them I can clearly hear the car. The car just might not be as loud as it is to other people. Anyway, that's about my story. And I want to send a ton of love to any of you guys that are watching this and going through the same process, because it is quite something. I have to admit. And it does take getting used to. So yeah, just sending hugs and kisses and making sure that you're not alone in this. And yeah, on top of that, I have found many videos that speak about how hearing loss is caused by demons, which we could go check out if you're in for that. And we could talk about this tinnitus therapist who disabled comments and who discredited audiologists, as well as didn't show like to dislike ratio. Which, you always know someone is really genuine when they don't show the like to dislike ratio and disable the comments. Wonderful. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Give me more ideas in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also follow me on Byte and TikTok. Ring that bell. Love you all so much. And see you next time.